Hi everyone. I hope you there can hear me. Please say hi on the messages that you see on the sidebar on the right. It would be nice, to see you, to understand who you are. We're going to talk today on WebRTC in education. WebRTC is a topic that I really love. Education is nice. Again, just to know that everything is fine, that the audio is fine, that you actually see me. Thank you. Just hi Rohan. Just say hi there if you want, say if you're dealing with education or not, or what it is that you're expecting. I'll be watching that every once in a while to see where you are. This is the first time I'm using Crowdcast, so it's the first for me, and we'll see how it goes with trying to screen share and doing a presentation at the same time. Hi Michael, hi Ankit, glad to see you here. So let's start and see how this goes. Let me start by doing a screen share. I'll share everything and I'll try from time to time to simply switch. Okay. So what we're talking today is what WebRTC does to the education space and what happens there when we talk about innovation. What we'll go through is, first of all, what WebRTC is, then where exactly do we find WebRTC when it comes to education, and what are the challenges that we have as developers and as entrepreneurs to take WebRTC and mesh it into an education use case. And one thing that I want to say, we've got a present for you. So if you stand till the end, we're going to give you a nice bonus that you can use with TestRTC. My name is Tzachi Levent-Levi. I am a co-founder of a company called TestRTC. In the end of this presentation, I will explain a bit more how we work and what we can do in order to facilitate your needs in WebRTC and in the education space. So first, let's go and look at what WebRTC exactly is. And for me, WebRTC offers real-time communication natively from a browser. Okay, so you can take voice and video calling, this kind of a session that we're actually doing now through Crowdcast, and do it inside the browser. Okay, most of you came to your Chrome browser or Firefox and entered the URL, and here we are together. You didn't have to install anything. Now, what makes it possible is the fact that the browser now has a media engine inside it that has a JavaScript API on top of it. Okay, now I want to ask a quick question, so I'll stop sharing to see where we are for a second. Okay, and that's does any of you don't know what WebRTC is or hasn't experienced WebRTC so far? No, don't be shy, write that down. If that's the case, I want to understand where we are. Okay, so either you're all shy or everybody here knows WebRTC, which is great. So let's continue from here. And back to sharing. Now, WebRTC, at the end of the day, and this is very important, it's a technology, it's not a solution. Okay, don't come and say, well, if you compare WebRTC to Skype, then Skype can do this and WebRTC can't. It doesn't really matter. Now, it's not the case simply because WebRTC enables you to build something like Skype. Skype today uses WebRTC, for example, in its own, Skype for Web or Skype for Linux. So you can build something like Skype with WebRTC or something like Crowdcast with WebRTC. Crowdcast, by the way, is based on WebRTC, which is one of the reasons why we wanted to use this as a platform for this webinar. Now, this is very important, okay? At the end of the day, what we're dealing with is a piece of technology, a building block, that we can use and as one of the many building blocks that we need in order to build our own service on top of it. Now, if you look at WebRTC, it sits at an intersection of two different worlds. One of them is a traditional voice over IP. Okay, with voice over IP, and I come from a background of voice over IP, we have this, way of doing voice calling and video conferencing, and we know how this is done, and we've learned these ways, and there are ways to do voice over IP. And then there is the internet and the web, which works differently, has different notions. The first time I had to build a cloud service in the company, when I worked on voice over IP, I brought someone external that built websites for the internet. He taught me a lot about what it is to build for the web and how different it is from voice over IP. And WebRTC sits exactly at that point of intersection between them, which makes it a challenge, both for developing, managing, running, testing, whatever it is that you want to do with it. There are just different rules there that people that deal with VoIP need to learn, and people that deal with the internet and websites need to learn as well. Now, if you look at who is using WebRTC, that's everyone out there. Okay, every large company today that has anything to do with communication is either doing something with WebRTC now, planning to do, playing, trying to do, exploring, or have a running product with it. Facebook Messenger, for example, all of the voice and video calls in that service happen to use WebRTC. Skype has WebRTC in parts of the clients that it has. Slack just launched yesterday their video calling and had voice calling before that. That is also powered by WebRTC. If you look at Comcast, they added to their X1 streamer the ability to share video files from a phone using WebRTC. Cisco has a service called Spark that is based on WebRTC, and they put in there all of their investments in whatever the future lies when it comes to video conferencing. Snapchat acquired a company called Deadlive that did video calling, group video calling, using WebRTC. They wanted that technology to be in-house for them. There are many others, more than 1,000 companies that use WebRTC today. Now, before we go to where it is in education, let me stop sharing again for a second. And sorry, I've got a bit of a cold today. Yes, that's true. We are all experiencing right now, Jayesh. This is what WebRTC enables us to do, and this is what we're doing now. The funny thing is that you can even look at Crowdcast as a type of an education service. Okay, we're now in a webinar. We're learning something new. I could have used that just as well to give a lesson to someone, and there are a lot of these types of lesson-based services that are used with WebRTC as well. And what I want to go now is dive into the education space and look at some of these different companies, vendors, and ideas that we've seen at SRTC of those that are building something in education and how these use cases are starkly different from one another. Okay, so let's dive into the screen sharing again. And we're back again. So where do we find WebRTC in education? This one is the easiest, the classroom. If you look at how video conferencing tried to get into the education space in the last 2 decades, it was through the classroom. The idea was, well, we're going to give instead of a lesson inside the class and do that instead virtually. Now, one way to do that is to virtualize everything. Imagine that this is a lesson that we're taking online, and you need to be here because you won't graduate without it. So the teacher is virtualized. I'm joining online remotely. The students are virtualized. The same thing can be with the teacher only virtualized. Okay, you all sit in the room in the university, but we brought an external speaker to give a session about something, and he's the unique one in his space. You can see this from time to time, for example, in large events where they couldn't bring a specific speaker that they really wanted. Then you can also only virtualize the student, either all of them. So you bring a teacher to a studio, or some of them because they can't come physically to the lesson or because they're sick. There is a very interesting use case that I'm now working on that specifically looks at children that are staying at home and are joining such webinars online. Well, not webinars, but joining lessons in their class online, and they are sick at home for months at a time. So this is an investment that is worth making in order to have them stay in their studies and be there with their classmates. The other place, the stark opposite, is private tutoring. Okay, we are going to give a one-on-one lesson and we are going to do it online. Why? First, because the school dictates us to do so. It happens, so if you have a kid that needs some extra tutoring or private lesson, you might be able to do that through school. And then there are some companies that are trying to say, well, you know, we're going to teach English or math to our kids, but paying them in the US or the UK is expensive for private tutoring. What we're going to do is to build a data center here and one in India where teachers are going to cost less, but they know English well enough. And we're going to use them as teachers for our students for these private lessons. And this is part of some of the school systems that I've seen. So you can do that as part of schooling. The second is because the parent or the student decided that this is what he wants. Okay, I want to learn something new today. It can be guitar lessons. It can be a private math math class that I want to take with someone that will enhance my knowledge or get me up to speed with whatever it is that I'm experiencing as a challenge in school. Now, the third thing, which is even more interesting, is crowdsourcing private tutoring, where the idea here is to practice. I've seen a few interesting education services that what they do is decide to take the part of exercising, for example, a language, and in order to do that, they will find someone from the country of origin that you want to learn, so that he will be online with you to practice the language. So let's say I want to speak Spanish, he will find me someone in Spain that is willing to talk to me for half an hour or whatever, paid or unpaid, that's not the issue now, okay? But the idea is that now I can practice the language with someone that is knowledgeable about it and is not necessarily a teacher. Then there's a webinar. This is what we're doing now, and I hope that you are not sleeping, but that's what happens to me in a lot of the webinars that I'm attending, and there's a lot of attempts today to make a webinar into something that it is a lot more interesting. So adding video, for example, give that impression. Adding this way for you to write things on the sidebar that I can't see now when I'm sharing my whole screen is another way. And there are other different ways where live video and streaming come hand in hand in order to offer that kind of an experience. Okay. Now remember that webinars come in different shapes and sizes. They are not equal to one another. A WebEx session is different than this one, which is different than Webinar Jam or other platforms that are out there. So if you want to develop a webinar platform, think about the user interaction. What goes in voice? Are you going to support video? Are you going to add screen sharing or only uploads of PDFs and presentations that you can share and control in a way that is more controlled? Okay. Do you want this feed on the sidebar? Do you want people to have more sharing, more knowledge, more experience? Do you want people to know and have more visibility of who else is in the room with them? Okay. All of these things are things that you can try and look at. What I also see is a lot of people that are going to do a webinar style interaction on Facebook Live. So they're not even using a platform that is geared towards that, just something that is out there and has the reach that they need in order to get to their target audience. Now let's stop for a second, just so I can see again if there's anything interesting on the sidebar. Okay, thanks, Michael. And yes, Crowdcast team, this works great. I am happy so far. Back to sharing. Next time I need to find a way to do it without skipping. I'm sure that there is one. Now, so we talked about, class lessons, then private lessons, then webinars, but there are other modes as well. This one is an interesting one that I've seen only recently or a few times, and that's almost the opposite of a webinar. And in this case, the idea is that I see all of the students at the time of the specific lesson, and it's not a private lesson. I'm giving a group lesson. It might be a yoga class, okay, a fitness class, something in which I need to see you doing something in front of your camera, okay? This is also an education type of a use case. It's also something that we see on the market and something where WebRTC can come into play. Now, the reason we see all of these new and rich different types of use cases is because WebRTC made these things, first of all, easier to implement and develop and more accessible. So it reduces the barrier of entry for developers that want to build something. Okay, so the cost of building such a service has lowered. And the second thing, it also reduces the friction in entering such a session. There is no installation that is needed. You just go to a URL, it starts. There's all of these widgets on the screen that are needed for this specific use case that I have, okay? If it's a fitness class, I can start looking and analyzing the video in the backend somehow, okay, using artificial intelligence and do some things that I want. So there are a lot of things that we can do today that we just couldn't do before WebRTC and before all of these explosion of cloud and artificial intelligence and analytics. One more thing that I've seen is the type of we help each other out. Okay, one of these is teacher office hours. You have a course, there's office hours, and the office hours are not in a physical room, they're online. So you take an online course, the course is pre-recorded, so you log in whenever you want, you watch the videos or read whatever it is to read or listen to a podcast whenever you want. And then there are office hours where you can come in, you can ask questions, you can do a specific lesson during the office hours and raise issues there. Okay, that's one. And the other one is to create learning groups for students. So for example, you can have university, and the university can in itself be virtualized. So the teachings happen online. But then I can say, you know what, if your students and there are assignments that are done in groups, or if you have questions, you can ask other students that are learning the same thing. So now we are going to connect you to each other instead of connecting you only to the teacher. Okay, so instead of a student and teacher, we can do sideways as well. And again, all of these types of interactions are made possible because WebRTC is available today. Now, one thing that I've seen lately, and that was also interesting, is that what we're going to do, we're going to virtualize the proctors. There are exams where what we want to do is we have these exams taken, but they're taken online or at home. And if they're taken in that way, we want to know that you're not cheating and not Googling the things that we don't want you to check for, or you're not having someone else impersonate you and take that class instead of you. So we are going to have you open up your camera and share your screen while you do the exam. And we're either going to record that, and that's it. Okay, and we're going to look at it only if we think that you cheated, or you're going to have a physical proctor that is going to look at the screen with multiple students on it, and he's going to put the stamp that everything was fine with that specific session. Okay, so we started with a class, we moved to private lessons, went to webinars, from there to the opposite of a webinar where I want to see all the students. And then we looked at sideways, how we're going to assist it agile in our teachings, and we went back to the classroom when we have a test, when we want a proctor to sit in that virtual classroom and actually see the students inside the test. Okay, and we've got all of these different types of use cases that are out there. for education that are no longer bound to a classroom or the ways that we've done these kinds of things up until today. Okay, so it's not as if what I'm doing is only saying, we've got a classroom, let's virtualize it and we're done. There are a lot of other things that I can do with it. But I have a question. Are we still limiting ourselves in what we consider education? Okay, are there or might there be other things that we can do and think about as education? And let me, just give you quickly one example of that, and then see if you might have an example or two as well. So think about it while I share my screen and show that one example. There were a few, but this one was just the one that, struck me the most. And I want you to see this one. This is a company that I bumped into recently called We Rehearse. What they do is they allow actors to rehearse and find coaches to rehearse with. So what I'm going to do, I have a role to play. I want to rehearse with someone and get the feedback. So I'm going to do it online. Instead of doing it with friends, I'm going to do it with someone from my actual domain and my actual expertise. And he knows everything there is to know about what I'm trying to do. And he can give me that feedback online. Okay. So as you can see, there's also a business model. The actor pays, and then the coach will get money, probably a revenue share with re-rehearsed. But is this education? Is training education? Is learning something new education in its own sake? So really, what do you think? Any ideas, anything that you want to share on this specific topic, or things or use cases that I haven't shared here that are still in the education space? Just, write it down, say hi if you just joined. Sorry again, I'm nose is. Yes, peer programming, that's true. There were not only one, there were a few of those. The idea there was, again, you have a shared screen where two people are developing on the same IDE, okay, environment for developers, and they have a video chat in the same time. So the first one is peer programming, but the other one is, if I'm going to take you into a role in my company, I want to check you first, but I don't want you to come over, or this is an overseas engagement, so we're going to do it remotely. So this is going to be part of a hiring program, or again, peer programming to improve whatever it is that you're developing. So yes, that was a good one, Michael. Engaging and helping clients understand technology solutions that will help them with their business. Yes, we've seen there's a lot of that. This for me is what I like to call a marketplace. Yes, Code Mentor IO, they came and they went. There were others as well, a few others. I can find them, but not now. So Michael, if that interests you, just ping me here and I'll make sure, to send it to you somehow. So the part that I talk about, Ankit, is there is marketplaces. I want to learn guitar. What do? I go online to a marketplace. Pop Experts is one such company, 24 Sessions, another company. Live Ninja was such a company before they pivoted, and there are about 10 or 20 different vendors that do exactly that. You go online, you search for the exact expertise that you are looking for, the type of lesson you want to learn. You find the person, and then you book a session with him, and you pay him from the platform. Now, what's beautiful about that is that it reduces the risk, because you pay only if the session was successful. You can rate the person, you can see ratings of others. The teacher knows that this is actually happening, okay, and you're going to pay. He's not going to do it through PayPal before or after the lesson. He's doing it through a platform that vets the students and the teachers in a way. There is a rating system. I also already said that. There is a way to search for whatever it is that I want to learn. Okay, so you see all of these types of companies. There is not only We Rehearse, there is another company, Rehearsal, doing something similar. There is another one from a guy that left Google recently. that is looking at, I want to find someone to coach me in the business space on a specific domain. So again, that can be said to be an education type of a use case. Okay, so what we get to at the end of the day is that there are just so many different ways to look at education, and you can't say that this is only one or two ways of doing that. Okay, so it's not as if you've got one education use case, you know, the next one is going to be the same. It's a totally different market. You might be selling it through a different model than the other one. The buyer is going to be different than the user in that case. The buyer might be the school, it might be the student, it might be the teacher. Okay, there are different ways of who is going to be the buyer for that. It might be the government or the city or whoever. Then there are different mechanics. It might be one-on-one calls, it might be group calls, or you know, these things just vary so much. And this brings me to the next part, which is the challenges. Okay, so we saw that WebRTC allows us to do some nice things. It allows us and enable us to run different types of use cases in the education space. By the way, all the barns that I've showed you, there are at least one or two companies of each that is out there. Some of them more than 10 doing exactly that. One of the most popular ones that I've encountered in the last year is companies that decided what they want to do is teach English, and not in the US, but they're going to use teachers in the US or in English speaking countries and get them to students that are living in countries that need this type of a specific education. So if I remember correctly, in Korea, in South Korea, English is one of the important parts that you need to go through if you want to get a degree or something like that. Then there are Chinese that want to learn English, and you know, these different types of combinations. And you see them all the time. So in the education space, languages is, you know, lots of companies there already. So if you look at the challenges, you need to first understand how an education product looks like. How do you build it? So first and foremost, there's the product or the service, whatever it is that you want to offer your customers. So you start by saying, I have a dream. And in that dream, I see students, and these students need the help with, I don't know, whatever. And they need to find teachers, and they are going to connect to teachers in that way. The groups are going to be small. I want them to be only 4 people in a group, and they can do this and that, and there is collaboration that goes on. Okay, all of these things. So that's your product. Part of it, by the way, is, well, they're going to sign in using Facebook. Why? Because that's where my students are living today. And the teachers are going to sign in with the username and password because, well, they're older and whatever it is you decide. But there are a lot of mechanics in the product that are not related to communication, but rather to people and business practices and business flows and business processes that you need to have in place. Now, the way I look at it, the layer below is the LMS, the learning management system. Okay, this is how you are going to do the teaching part. How do the classes look like? Are they available online without a teacher in the room? Is there things that the student need to read? Are there quizzes, polls, whatever the mechanics are in that LMS? Okay, how are you going to rate and grade students? How are you going to certify them at the end? Do you give them badges during the course? All of these things require you to have an LMS, an open source one, a commercial one, a proprietary self-built one, part of what you need to have there. And then below, when we talk about WebRTC and real-time live communication, okay, we've got the RTC part, the real-time communication part. Now remember these 3 things and see that RTC is at the bottom of it. Okay, now the features that we are going to need in the RTC part and in communication space are varied and very rich and wide. Okay, it can be voice or video. We need to decide. We're using both. One of them, escalating from voice to video. Do we allow people to mute? Is only the teacher showing his video? Is it a multi-party call? Okay, a one-on-one session? Is it a broadcast? Crowdcast, for example, allows me to broadcast, but it also allows me to pull someone in and to have him work with me or interact with me during the session. So we could have done it a lot more interesting if I had another person here, because I'm not that interesting. Okay. Do I want messaging? In most webinar platforms, you can send messages either to the group or to the teacher or whatever. Here we've got this nice sidebar where people can write stuff. Again, I'm not seeing it at the moment. Do I allow document uploading, sharing, file sending, maybe collaboration, whiteboarding, screen sharing? Okay, here what we're doing is screen sharing, but there is no document uploading. I couldn't have uploaded this presentation beforehand. I need to screen share it. You can't write things on it, but sometimes you do. Sometimes you want them to be able, that the student will be able to show or point something on the teacher's screen. Are we recording this? Is it going to be available for playback, or is just our recording just to be able to see what goes on? Remember the proctors, where the student is actually taking an exam? This is something that we want to record. Webinar, yes, we do want to record. One-on-one, maybe. School lessons, maybe yes, maybe no, depending on the use case. Where are we going to be able to access the session? Is it going to be on specific browsers, all of them, mobile devices? Do you want an application? Do we need to put a special machine inside the classroom with a special camera that has pan, tilt, and zoom that it can move around? All of these are questions that you need to ask yourself on the RTC part during the development process. These are going to affect what is going to happen in the end with your service. Now, when it comes to development, I generally see three different approaches. Now, the first and foremost, or the easiest one, is to use a CPaaS. A communication platform as a service solution. So you go to Twilio, to TalkBox, to someone else. You implement everything that you need on top of them when it comes to communication. Less headaches, you've got it up and running, probably faster. But two things. The first, you need to pay them on each event and every minute that goes through the system. It might be fine with your business model, it might not. Again, it depends a lot also on your developers. Some of them are NIH, not invented here, and they would say, I want to build this on my own because I can do a better job. Or they would say, it's not what we need. It might be true, it might not. Something to check and question. The second reason is that it is actually not what you need. For example, if you are trying to go and build an education type of a service, and you are going to do that in South Africa, no one of the CPaaS providers today is capable of offering you something that works there properly, because none of them have a data center in South Africa. Okay, so there might be issues with the features that these platforms offer, where you would say, well, I'm missing that feature and I must have it, so I can't use CPaaS. Or it might be that, it's got everything that you need, but it's just not running well where your students are or your teachers are, and now you need to figure it out on your own. So that's the first approach, CPaaS. The second one, something that goes the opposite direction, is that what we are going to do is to outsource the development. So we're going to do it in-house in a way, but we're going to take a vendor that knows how to build these things, okay? He's going to use whatever open source frameworks that are out there or commercial ones, and he's going to build it for us. What we need to do is to write an RFP or a requirements document, send it to him, wait for him to develop it, test it, go through the processes, and have a service that got outsourced. This is also very common in this space. Now, the third option we're going to bring everything in-house. Okay? So what we are going to do now is develop it from scratch on our own, everything bit by bit. We're going to use open source components, probably, maybe commercial ones, and we're going to integrate them together because, you know, WebRTC is free, so we just need to put enough developers and invest enough time in order to make it work. Which one is better? I don't know. It depends a lot on many things, by the way. It depends on your company, the DNA that you have in your company. Okay, this is one of the most important things. You have developers that are experienced in that. Okay, yes or no? I don't know. You need to answer that. So let's see what we have here. Monica, may need recording to settle disputes if it's a marketplace. Yes, exactly. It's the same with proctors. It's the same with a lot of other things. You need that for a lot of things. Recording is one of, I'd say, almost a mandatory feature in education, but it's not a mandatory feature in the MVP. So for example, if you are starting to build something in the education space and you're doing this in-house, my suggestion is if you can, you know, leave recording to the second phase, do that. It will make things easier for you until you get enough customers to make it viable. Okay? So that's something that I would suggest, Monica. Rohan, how can device accessibility possible using WebRTC? Well, you know, it's just a matter of choice. If you go not to the test RTC, but to my blog, bloggeek.me, there is, and search for cheat sheet, there is a WebRTC device cheat sheet in there that will show you exactly how you can use WebRTC in different types of browsers and devices. Just to say quickly, for iOS, you need an app. For Android, it's either an app or going through the web page, okay, HTML page. In Internet Explorer and Safari, you can either use a plugin, go to Flash, or the approach that I love most these days is to build a PC app using Electron. Electron allows you to take Chrome web app and just make it into an app that can be downloaded, and that's it. Okay, so I'm not saying it's the best approach, but it's possible. Now, using Crowdcast, I'm not even sure if your end is using WebRTC or they are using a streaming service to get to you at the moment. Okay, so you might have a delay of 10 or 20 seconds and get the stream over HLS or MPEG Dash or Flash, things that are available in all the browsers without a plugin. Going on, Michael, what's the latest buzz about WebRTC with Safari? Well, it's going to be there, nobody knows when. I was told that get user media is there, peer connection is there, but broken. It will take time and it will get there. So, you know, just hang on tight and you'll have that. And Keith, how is Apple not adopting affecting the film? I think it's the opposite. Not having WebRTC in Safari is currently hurting Safari more than it hurts WebRTC. And the reason for that is simple. On iOS, I don't really need WebRTC in the browser for a lot of the use cases because they're not ad hoc, most of them. Some of them are, okay, I'm not going to, but some of them aren't, and there is nothing else that I can use anyway. So there is no replacement to WebRTC there. And in Safari, I can be blunt and just tell the customer, you know, just run it with Chrome. And you'll notice that a lot of people that use that use Mac are fine with moving to Chrome for some of the things that they need because Safari is lagging behind in several different technologies, not only in WebRTC. So they are catching up. It will take time, and I really don't care. Okay, I'm just looking for solutions. Leif, I hope I said your name correctly. In terms of an education platform leveraging WebRTC interactions, what are things you found you have tried to do but were unable to do due to lack of features developed around the ecosystem? I think you can do everything today. It's just a matter of how hard it is going to be. So the hard thing to do today is large-scale webinars that are live. Okay, if you want something that has close to 0 or sub-second latency in the education space, that can be hosted with over 1,000 people, that would be one of these hard use cases. And you'll be able to do that. It's just going to be very hard to achieve. Everything else, it's just a matter of how much money you're going, time and resources you're going to throw on it. iOS, again, Michael, the way I look at it, if you look at the education space, in many cases, they are served today in mobile over apps, not through URLs. Most of them. Again, I'm not going to say all of them, but most of them. If you want to go and learn languages, there are a bazillion of apps in the App Store that will teach you languages. Putting WebRTC inside a mobile device is not that hard. It has been done many times, okay? All of the CPaaS platforms have that capability, so you can use that as an SDK. If you want to do it on your own, you can do that as well. Search YouTube for Cranky Geek, and you will find that from last month, I think, yes, last month we had sessions there in San Francisco. All of them are on mobile, and how you port it to mobile and work it in mobile, iOS, Android, with React Native, with other types of technologies, whatever. So it's possible. It's painful, but it's possible. Okay. So it's not that everything is easy. But let's compare it to doing these things without WebRTC, or going back 5 years and trying to do that, and then complain that WebRTC isn't good enough for you. That would be my approach. I'm very optimistic about what we have today and the tools and capabilities that it has to offer us and give us. So let's jump in back to our presentation. And things I want you to remember. These are the important bits, especially if we're going to go and develop things with WebRTC. First one, compliance and regulation. I was asked a question beforehand. I'm not going to answer it simply because I'm not an expert of compliance and regulation in education. My guess is that these regulations are different between different countries. In the US, they're probably also different between different states. But if you need to do that, you can do that on top of WebRTC. There's nothing that tells it you can't. Remember, WebRTC is a building block. You can build whatever it is with it. If you need the student to sign something, you can get him to sign it before he starts a session. If you need payment to be made beforehand, that's possible. If you need to record a session, it's possible. If you need to get the approval of parents, that's possible. Whatever it is that is in the compliance and regulation part, you can take care of. If you need the data to stay in that specific state, also possible. Now, geography has a huge effect. In my mind, geography would be the #1 reason why education companies and startups will decide to build things on their own instead of going and using a communication platform as a service. Okay, there are countries where CPaaS is limited in its reach and availability. This would be most of Asia, especially China and India. Okay, South Africa, or Africa as a whole, is like the black hole out there. And doing education there is quite challenging. Now, scale isn't easy to accommodate. So doing a one-on-one session is fine. Doing 1,000 one-on-one sessions in parallel is a lot harder, especially if you need to record them. It's hard because it takes more than a single machine, and then you need to see how it scales and how it operates. And do you have enough bandwidth to support that, and enough CPU and storage and things like that? Second thing to remember, that if you want to scale a webinar, for example, Crowdcast, and you want to move from 10 people to 50 to 100 to 500 to 1,000, these are different types of scales, and you need to be able to test that. Now, if you have 100 QA engineers and they can open 100 browsers for you at the same time to test every time you need, great. If you don't, you need a way to automate that and to be able to test that. Okay, this is important. And scaling and testing and geographies isn't just about the real-time communication part of the service. Okay, so if you're using a CPaaS platform, for example, Or you would say, well, I'm using that kind of a technology, Corento, Janus, whatever, and they checked for scale, so I don't need to. Well, great. But is your system scaling at the same time? The ability to send these chat messages at the side, the ability to screen share, or to do other interactive things that you've added on top of this form. Okay? You need to be able to check these things as well and to make sure that they work properly when you scale up things. Okay, so it's not only the development that isn't just RTC, it's the whole, I'd say, the whole waterfall that goes into development, production, all of the life cycle in there. And then there's the day after. You launch, you run the service. How do you know that it's up and running? Okay, the servers might be up, but nobody is able to make a session because something is broken somewhere, but you get no indication from anywhere else. So you need to be able to check for that as well, to monitor the system on a daily basis to make sure that everything is up and running and not broken. Okay, now what we do at TestRTC is deal exactly with these things, with the ability to take a service, run scripts on top of it. Okay, and when we run the scripts, we allow automation of that and being able to use it for monitors or for scale or functional testing or whatever it is that you need in order to bring your product to market and to make sure that it is running properly on the market. Now back to the questions that we had here. Okay, thanks, Leith. Good, I appreciate that. James, why does Chrome not support screen sharing over WebRTC without extension install or changing a flag? Easy. So sharing the screen is considered to be a lot more sensitive than sharing the camera. Okay, when I share my camera, I still need to allow it, but I got this nice, blue thingy at the top that shows me that I'm sharing, so I'm aware of that. If I'm sharing my screen and I forgot about it, how am I going to know that this is the case? How am I going to know that I'm sharing the whole screen and not only part of it? I don't want to share the screen without being aware of it at all times. On top of that, if there is abuse over screen sharing, me as a browser vendor, I want to be able to throw that extension from the market. Now, Firefox isn't doing anything differently. Firefox requires you to white label your service in advance, essentially saying the same thing. We're going to vet you, and if you're not going to be a nice guy, we're going to put you in the blacklist again. Okay? So that's why there's a sensitivity issue that is related to screen sharing that needs to be taken care of. I know that there are some use cases which relate to workforce and employees, and they need to be able to record and screen share whatever they are doing, that there it adds a friction that you don't want there. But if you still want to do it from the browser and not from an app that you control, then that's life. I hope I answered you, James. Yes, there is that link, Himanshu. Don't remember if that's written there exactly, but I'm assuming it's in the same lines. It is plugin friendly, but it requires an extension. The extension is, you press a button, it installs. You don't need even to leave the page. Handrin, the video is probably lagging because it's not real time. I'm assuming that if you go to Chrome WebRTC internals on your end, you might not even be using WebRTC on your side, but rather using MPEG Dash or Flash or HLS. That's a way for Crowdcast to do the other side and to scale to a large number of viewers at the same time. Okay, I hope that answers this question. Great. So again, if you are building something in the education space and you need to be able to test it, check out testrtc.com, go there, go online. We assist our customers to write their first scripts, to run them first, and to look at the result and the analysis that we can do. We're now helping a bunch of companies. Some of our customers include the biggest names in the market. To just go to the website and see the logos there. it's a great platform, really. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a co-founder. One last thing, yes, and Keith, how often do WebRTC devs blame them? All the time. Now, this is a point of developers. They will blame everyone besides themselves. Okay, you know that it works on my machine. That's a great sentence. There is another one. It's not my code. Okay, there's my dialect. But as a developer myself, in the past at least, when I looked at the code that was 1 year old that I've written, it looked like, who's writing that way? So developers will blame everyone besides themselves. Now, if you have a tester and he is trying to say, something isn't working, the developer is not going to listen anyway. And this is where TestRTC comes into play. TestRTC will bring the statistics in a way that is easy to look, easy to measure, and easy to reproduce. Because you run a test over TestRTC on machines that are, monitored. You say exactly what the scenario is. We tell these machines whatever exact network they are using. Is it a good network, a bad network? Is there a packet loss? Are they behind the firewall? This is what is going to happen. This guy is going to sign in. Then this guy is going to call him. Then we're going to run the call for 2 minutes, wait, and done. Okay? And then you are going to look at the statistics and see, there's a problem here. There's packet losses. Someone is to blame for that. Okay? And then there's, I'd say, a better discussion between testers and developers. Okay? Blab, yes, I played with it once. They've used TalkBox to build the interactive platform and build their own connectivity to a CDN on top of it. I don't like animation on my videos. I'm old-fashioned. I'm old. Okay, white hairs. I can't relate to that. We've got customers that deal with all of these hearts and stupid things that go online. It's hard for me. It's hard enough, to do this thing on the sidebar and to talk to you at the same time. I do that. It's actually nice, but it is hard. It's not something that I'm used to doing. Okay, so just check TestRTC. I'll get back to questions in a second, but let me just finish this part of the presentation so I can come back to you. So go to testrtc.com, check us out. And if you do that before the end of the year, we're going to give you a 50% discount on all the pay-as-you-go minutes that you are going to purchase until the end of the year. You are limiting it per customer per 100,000 minutes of testing. So you can purchase these minutes before the end of the year and use them next year if you need. Okay, TestRTC has different types of business models. One of them is pay-as-you-go, where you pay for the minutes you test. Then there are different types of monthly subscriptions and monitoring that runs all the time. If that is of interest of you, just reach out to us, open an account, we'll get back to you, and we can start the interaction about that. So I'd like to thank you for joining and being here with me. It was fun. Again, the first time I did this kind of a webinar. If you have any more questions, please ask. Let me look at the questions that we have here below. Oh, there are more than there were before. So let's see. So compliance, governance, I said that, I'm not something that I know about it enough. Monica, thanks again. Love your feedback. Let's see, Bob, give the education and coaching within education depend a lot on connection and relationship. Okay. Technology. Now I have a question, and if you're here, it's a question for you. Do you know me now after this, 40 minutes of interaction? Do you feel like this has been relevant? Is watching me moving my hands and sniveling because I have this, cold in last few days was a good thing? Do you think that if you would have done this on a weekly basis, it would build trust and relation between us? Okay, it's a question to you. For me, at least, I've worked in this space of video conferencing for the last 20 years or so. It was what I started after graduation from the university. It becomes second nature. I had people and friends that I've Only met 2 or 3 years down the road after working with them so much over video that it was like meeting old friends. Okay, before I go to the questions, let's go back to here. Thanks, Missy. Himanshu, it's plug-in free, but it requires an extension. So you need to write an extension. Writing an extension doesn't take more than 10 or 20 lines of JavaScript code. So it's not like something, crazy to build. Handrin, thank you. Bruno, thank you as well. Okay. And Kit, I'll try to keep up and do more sessions. If there are any specific things that you want, just, email me and we'll make sure that we do these kinds of sessions. Going on with the questions. Okay, streaming there. This is a technical question. Okay, Missy, huge topic of what it is that you need to build and how you need to build it. We can take it offline. When trying to educate using WebRTC, what is your favorite solution? There is none, really. I love doing sessions over Google Hangouts. I used to do them over Talkie.io, but people left there, so it's broken since then. I've done a few on top of Appearing, which is nice. In BlogGeek.me, there is a virtual session once a month that I do with some of the customers, and there I decided to use Drum. There's a company called This Is Drum. What they did was suitable for me because I could embed it in my website, and it's what I wanted. For an online course on WebRTC that I'm doing, I've tried using Google Hangouts, needed more than 10 people in a room, so switched to using Jitsi. Just, the free Jitsi Meet service, and I got some help from Atlassian to run that. So it changes. It's like, it depends on the use case and the type of session that I want. I couldn't do this on Jitsi. Crowdcast seemed like the best approach, and it was fun to do. Okay, so that's why. Okay, how does one handle video calls in low bandwidth environments? You switch to audio only or use VP9. And then you need to define what low bandwidth is, Monica. Okay. John, yes, please come check us. So Monica, if you need to use low bandwidth environments below 300 kilobits, don't do video. 300 to 400, I would try using VP9. More than that, low resolutions, okay, and then moving further along. Again, you can use WebRTC to test exactly what it's going to look like and what the experience is going to be, just by using the platform and giving the exact bitrate that you want. Missy, I'm going to answer that in a second, but got a question here from Laith. In terms of education, platform leveraging WebRTC interactions, what are things you've found you have tried to do? Okay, answer that already. How to avoid managing your own WebRTC infrastructure in a small project? CPaaS. Try TalkBox. It usually works if you need video. Twilio if you need only voice. There are about 10 others or 20 others. Okay, just play with them and try them out, Bruno. Okay. And if you're still thinking about it, just email me and I'll try to assist you. Okay, Michael, how would TestRTC handle authentication into our platform? So TestRTC actually automates browsers. So we get the browser, we write a script that goes through the exact things that you go inside the browser, okay? And when we go through these things, we can sign in, press buttons, mute, unmute, start a session, create a session. Okay, there are ways there and mechanics that allows us to put a single instructor and 20 students, or one chair, 3 visitors, or 3 participants that go into a session of 4 people speaking, and all the rest are viewers. All of these types of interactions are interactions that we support. So as long as you can run on a Chrome browser, I couldn't care less what you're doing. I can automate that. I hope that helped answer the question, Michael. Missy, identity and WebRTC. Identity doesn't really relate to WebRTC. You do it elsewhere and connect it into WebRTC. A lot of the WebRTC use cases in education as well don't really require an identity. You don't want it there. Okay, I've actually started writing a post on my blog, not on TestRTC, for next week around security, and part of it is identity. So search that up next week. I hope that helped you, Missy. If not, you can email me offline. WebRTC and bots for education. What's your opinion? I don't know enough about bots to say. You'll probably need a lot of artificial intelligence in there. If you have an interesting use case, email me. I'll be glad to learn more about it. I've seen a few use cases that are with connecting WebRTC. They usually happen to deal with cameras and being able to acquire cameras and show them to a person. I'm not sure if that's the use case. For me, it's not really IoT or bots, but if you have something, we can discuss. Handrin, any advices about the server specification? You need to look at the requirements and from there build a specification. Again, on Blog Geek Me post from this week is exactly about writing requirements. Hamenshu, does TestRTC simulate different network conditions? Yes, it does. It is capable of doing 3 things and doing it quite well. The first one, we can configure the network, the firewalls. Are you behind a firewall or not? Are you going to allow UDP traffic or not, TCP traffic or not, these kinds of things. And then we force the communication to go to return servers. Second thing is we go from different data centers around the world. So you can check what happens if a calls come from Asia, from Europe, or from the US to your service, what happens then. We have companies that are actually using the monitor to check different locations around the world and see the latencies of them throughout the day. We can also simulate latency, jitter, and packet loss. You just pick what you want. You're going to say this is 3G, this is Wi-Fi, this is DSL, this is whatever. And you can do it not only in the beginning of the session, but also in mid-session. So we can start a session in TestRTC, run it for 2 minutes, then drop the network. Wait 20 seconds and bring it back again. So this will test, are you going to reconnect or not? Okay, are you using ICE resets or things like that? So there are a lot of power that you have in WebRTC. Exactly, this is one of the things that you can do. Now about ICE connection state failed, one thing for you. We started running blog posts on our website with FIPO, Philip Henke. It started last week, where what we're doing, we're looking at WebRTC internals from different from different angles. The first one was showing the parameters. The second one that was published this morning was about active connections and how to find them, look into the indexes inside the file. The third one is going to be about debugging ICE connection states from the trace logs in WebRTC internals. So wait for that. It will come in a week or 2. We still need to write that. And these take a lot of time to write. I hope this will help you, Amanchu. So, stick with us. WebRTC also stores all of the WebRTC internals and gets that data, so you can download it and use that to debug your service in these connection states. How is TestRTC different from ColdStats.io? ColdStats.io monitors your service. You put it inside the service and it runs online inside your customers' browsers. TestRTC works in 2 different places. The first one, before you launch, I want to test my service. I want to be able to bring up 1,000 students to run a session now. And this is what they are going to do inside the session. And this is the networks that I want them to have. And this is the places around the world that I want them to be. You run the test, you get the results. You debug, you fix your bugs, you run the same test again. You check it again, you see if it solved the problem. Okay, so we're in the testing space for that and not in the monitoring space where ColdStats.io is. The second part is monitoring. We use a kind of an active monitoring. So there are use cases, for example, in the healthcare space where doctor visitations will happen at night only, because during the day, the clinic is open. And during the night, we're going to have virtual sessions. So you have a service that runs for 3 hours a day. Now, before these 3 hours, you actually want to make sure that the service is up and running. How do you know? If you're going to use calls.io, well, there is no call on the system. What SRTC does, it allows you to open the monitor, run it every 15 minutes. Okay, and when it runs every 15 minutes, it checks to see that the service is up and running and meets your expectations in terms of packet loss, quality of the service, the ability to actually connect, the number of people inside the session, these kinds of things. And if it goes wrong, you get an alert. Okay, the alert can go directly to your NOC, to your backend, whatever system that you use for monitoring, or through email, whatever you want, or all of them. Missy, yes, it is possible for TestRTC to test turn service. You do that all the time. The only thing you need to do after writing the script is to open a switch and say, I want now to activate the firewall for this endpoint. And then you're going to check that. Okay? Now I'm going to count to 3. And if you have no more questions, I'm going to stop this session and go sleep because I'm half dead as it is, and I'm only alive here by the use of medication. The session has been recorded. It's available for playback. I hope you enjoyed it. Okay, so starting to count. 1, 2, 3. Thanks a lot, everyone. Glad you are here. Glad you liked it, and hope to see you the next time we have a webinar.